Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this really unorthodox Yasmine Mohammed podcast episode. Today, things are a little bit different. It's going to be a conversation between my friend Jaleh Tavakoli and I. Jaleh and I recently went to Israel on this mission of peace with a group called Sharaka. Sharaka means partnership in Arabic, and this group was inspired by the Abraham Accords, and it's a partnership between the UAE and Israel, and their vision is to build a new Middle East together. So that's really the focus of the organization. And they invited people from all over the world, from all sorts of different backgrounds. They do this quite often. In our delegation, there was myself, where my background is Egyptian, and my mom is from Egypt, my father is from Gaza. And Jaleh, who's joining me here today, her family is from Iran, though she grew up in Denmark. Not all of her childhood. She grew up some of it in Iran as well. And we had some people from Pakistan, UAE, Morocco, all over the Muslim world. And we're here to talk to you about that today. And after our conversation, where we tell you all about our thoughts and ideas and impressions of our trip in Israel, you'll all have a chance to join in on the conversation, ask us questions, or just even leave your comments. Jaleh, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
So let's start off with what did we find surprising about, I'll let you go first. What was the surprising thing that you found about, this was your first time going to Israel. This is my first time going to Israel. Were there any things that surprised you? And if so, what were they?
There were many things that surprised me. The first thing I think of is the fact that it was so safe. Like I felt safe, and there are, because we, from the media and from social media, we always hear about the terrorist attacks, but they also happen in Europe. You hear about them all the time, but for some reason you think it's that's their whole reality over there, but it's not at all. And the difference is really that they're prepared for it down there, and that's what made me feel very safe, because they know that people can be crazy over there, and then they follow up, have guns, have security, have so I really like that. Whereas in Europe it can happen and people will run for their lives, and many people get killed when it happens. So that was the big difference. And we came during a war. Iran had just striked with over 300 rockets, drones.
I thought it was over 700 in the end.
Yeah, someone said, yeah. And even though that just had happened, people were living normal lives, were going to the beach, were going to work, were having, you're just living their lives. And that was really surprising and inspiring as well. Yeah.
Totally agree. One of my comments of what was surprising was the shelters everywhere, which I think is like basically a continuation of your point. The shelters, I mean, we saw shelters that were actually play places for kids, like in a playground, so that they don't feel too like it's foreboding and scary. It's got like pictures of Smurfs painted on it, but just the thought of like, because we're both moms, taking your kid to the playground, they're swinging, they're, sliding with their friends, and then a siren goes off and you're like, hey guys, let's go shelter because people are trying to kill us again. Like, it's just, all I could see when I saw that was childhood trauma. Like, you can try and make it as positive as you can and as safe as you can, but it's still, these kids are gonna, to a certain extent, that's not a normal childhood to run into a shelter when the sirens go off.
It's not, but at the same time, they don't sit around and cry about it. They just make
Yeah.
the best out of it. And of course, you should acknowledge that it's not normal and it's a shame that it should be like that. But they're not the people who just sit around and cry about it and make themselves into victims. They just, make a playground that is safe for their children and insist on life. That's really what Israel was about. It's just we're insisting on life. Our enemies are insisting on death. That's the difference.
That's so true. I completely saw that as well. And I was commenting to one of my friends, like just like the perfect juxtaposition between, so we saw in one of those kibbutzes, they had shown us the bombs that were dropped by people from Gaza, and they had basically taken like these piping from tubes that were meant for whatever, water, sewage. I don't know what it's meant for. I'm not a plumber, but they had like actual, like they had soldered on the fins, they had filled it with, explosives. They took something that was meant for good, it was
Yeah.
meant for empowering them and for sustaining them and for improving their lives. And they took those things and they turned them into bombs.
Yeah.
And we saw the exact opposite in Israel. We saw the exact opposite with the Israeli people, what they were doing. Like we're talking about those shelters, for example, some of those shelters in the kibbutz got covered in bullet holes.
Yeah.
So then they started painting around like these beautiful mosaics to cover the bullet holes, like
Yeah.
it just, or the way when we were in the Nova Memorial and for every person that was lost on that day, they planted a tree.
Yeah.
Like, isn't that just the Israeli mindset right there?
Yeah.
Like from
It is.
darkness, we are going to rebuild.
Yeah.
We're going to build life,
Yeah.
and you're absolutely correct. It's the polar opposite of the way we were raised. I just shared on Instagram today, this woman, of course, at one of these, quote unquote, pro-Palestine, really it's pro-terrorism
Yeah.
or anti-Israel
Yeah.
encampments. And she had a sign and it said, you can never defeat people who do not fear death, or something like that.
Yeah. They're
And it
really,
reminded me,
yeah.
yeah, it
It's
reminded me of the quote from
disgusting.
Osama bin Laden when he said, you will never defeat us because you love life and we love death. And he got it. That's exactly it. And we saw that when we were there, the exact polar, antithesis of these guys just, I don't want to say these guys, like obviously I'm not saying all of them. Let me just, stop and say that for a moment. My father is from Gaza and he was a peace activist, and there are many people in Gaza. We can't even hear their voices. We can't even know how many people in Gaza hate Hamas, hate the fighting, want nothing but peace, just want to be able to live, a quiet life with their families where they don't have to worry about bombs dropping on their children's heads. Don't want to be controlled by a terrorist organization in their homeland.
Yeah.
Obviously, those people are numerous, especially now.
Yeah.
But we don't get to hear their voices. We're hearing the voices of the extremists. We're hearing voices of the people who want this fight, and the people who are encouraging this. And the innocents are the ones that are being sacrificed, basically.
They're sacrificing their own, and with the same excuse, by the way, death is normal to us. If our children die, it's
they
meant
celebrate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's celebrate their martyrs, their, and this is, you want us to cry for your kids, and we will, because we love life and we cherish life. We cherish even the children of terrorists. We cherish life, even in the West, even in Israel, when they shoot a terrorist, they give them medical attention right away when they're pacified. So that's the reality of Israel. The reality of the other side is they want to kill Jews, and it's not about land. It's not about two-state solution. They're not interested in any of that.
Yeah, agreed. I thought it was interesting that you went for with such a cerebral answer because what I wrote for what was surprising was the food is so amazing.
Yeah, yeah,
I was like, why are Israelis so humble about their food? Like they need to talk about it more. I need to hear about it the same way I hear about French food and Italian food. Like
yeah.
the food
I
was
think, yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
So that
I think
was
it's
what really
because they're always being told it's not yours, It's really Arabic food, or hummus is
well,
ours, kebab is ours.
there are so many, everything in this world is basically a hybrid, right? Appropriated from
Yeah,
each other, right? Like in America,
exactly.
we're eating hamburgers. We didn't invent hamburgers, right? That came from Hamburg, obviously.
Yeah,
Hot
yeah,
dogs came from Frankfurt. So that's what we do. We're constantly taking from each other. And then even it can become our national foods. Like in France, the croissant, it doesn't even come from France. It comes from Vienna, Austria. Like it's pretty
yeah,
crazy. This is just what we do as human beings. But
yeah,
what's important is that as a woman who is of Arab descent, and I've eaten a lot of Arab food, um, it's just like similar to Turkish food, Greek food, Persian food, but
yeah,
each one has its own variation. And
yeah.
Israeli food most definitely has its own variations. I mean, they've got
It
that
was really
sauce,
good.
that amba sauce that was
Yeah,
created by Israeli Jews from Indian mangoes.
yeah,
And you know what? Like, there's nothing like that except for in Iraq, because Iraqi Jews are the ones who made it.
yeah.
That's the only part of the world where you would find this amba sauce. I mean, that's just
They
one
have they
example, but
have
they
really
basically have
good,
created
yeah.
their own. Yeah, it's
I
their own. What's the word I'm looking for? Not hybrid. There's another thing when you put food together. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, I know there's a word for it, but
There's a
I don't
word.
remember. I don't remember
Yeah,
it. But
fusion. That's what it
fusion, yes,
was.
exactly. The thing that I noticed was we went first to a Arab owned place with kebab, and it was really good. And
It's
then we went
amazing.
to an Israeli place, and we both started filming because it was so impressive. Because it was
Yeah.
so impressive, just the way that they were functioning, just the way they were proud and serving, and it was quick, and they had all of these vegetables stacked, all of these sauces, and many of the sauces were unique. Like
Mhm.
they had this chili sauce that I see in Denmark, and I've always asked, what is this? Where is this from? Because no nationality from the foreigners are really like, this is ours. It's a mixture of something, of some different. So I say this is the integration of Danish foreigners. That's the contribution to the Danish food. But I saw that over there they had the same thing. So maybe it's Israeli actually.
Maybe, who
Yeah,
knows? I mean, who's going to be able to trace back
yeah,
things, right? Like it's just this is
yeah,
the world. This is what we do. We all learn and grow from each other. We keep people's, I mean, where's the noodle from? Is it from Italy or is it from China, right? Like this constant thing. And it's just so ridiculous to me and rude and unfair and mean that they specifically pick on Israeli people and say, this isn't your food. When we saw when we were in Israel, where are Israeli people coming from? They're coming from Morocco, from Yemen, from Iraq. You know what I mean? Like they're coming from all over the world. They're coming from Russia. They're coming from all over Europe. Like it
yeah,
is truly a fusion
yeah,
of cultures and ideas and
yeah. Languages, I
and
mean,
foods. Yeah, it's
you really feel
beautiful.
the international vibe in Israel, and this is also interesting. And it was just a great country. I was surprised. I knew it was a great country when you look at what they have done with the desert that became
Yeah,
theirs, right? It was a desert. They
yeah.
made, I always, a lot of Iranians say they took a desert and made it into heaven, and
Mhm.
what the Iranian regime that did was to take heaven, make it into hell. So
Yeah.
this is, I knew that Israel was amazing because of, just ideas and everything, but really their soul, their spirit, it's amazing how they just keep on going, keep on wanting coexistence, keep on wanting dialogue, keep on, the hate is not there. And of course it's there in some, it must be, but they're really trying to look for how do we build partnerships with Muslims, how do we build partnerships with Arabs and Iranians and everyone who hates us. Let's build partnerships. Let's make coexistence the future of this part of the world, and really the world. Because I think that with the partnerships with the Abraham Accords, and when, I don't say if, but when the Iranian regime falls, it will become such a beautiful place. The Middle East will have so much to teach the West about the problems they have with Muslim immigrants, that Islamists who are ruining so much in the West.
Let's bring it back to Israel though, and the country there, because I know a lot of our listeners have not been there and they're just curious about the country itself. We talk a lot about the politics, and we will more again.
Yeah, sure.
But one of the other things that what you were talking about, which is the shocking thing of how it's sort of like from the desert, all of a sudden you've got these gorgeous, massive, sprawling cities. That was one of the first thoughts I had actually when we were in the van from the airport, because we drove from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, and I was like, I didn't realize how, because you always hear Israel's a small country, Israel's a small country, and I knew it was a small country, but I was actually really impressed with, I kept on saying like, it's only been 70 years. It's only been like, 70 some years, and like to build this much in such a short amount of time, for them to have like their tram system and like everything. It's quite impressive. It's
even the language,
amazing.
right? Just think about the language. They knew
the language. They brought it
just to
out
have
of
an education system that works for everybody, and everybody's, they have different traditions. They're from different parts of the world. They are different. Also, this is it's an example for the Middle East, because they have different political views, of course, very different political views within Israel. They have very different understandings of their own religion and how to practice it within the same country. And they of course they have their issues, but they still make a democracy function and a society function. And this is just, it's amazing what they did with with building everything on every level.
I was also really surprised at the stark, shocking difference between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. Like, right? It's so different. In Jerusalem, I honestly absolutely loved the buildings. It felt sort of like very European vibe to me, like that. It's called Jerusalem stone, I guess. I need to look up more about it. That's just what the tour guide said. But it's just beautiful buildings. Everything is super clean, super organized. So many Orthodox people, like you're seeing the different types of Orthodox clothing. And that was my first like, okay, wow, this place is really religious. Like the conservative sort of Orthodox Jewish people they're kind of really leading this country. And then I went to Tel Aviv.
And
I was like, oh, this is where my people are.
Exactly.
Right?
But
super relaxed.
Jerusalem reminded me of Iran, because there you saw the arranged marriage scenarios with the dates. We saw that at the hotel.
I know you thought it was cute. I did not think it was cute at all.
I know it's not cute, but sometimes good matches come from those, but it's not cute. It's not cute. It's not a way to do things in life. It's
But sorry to cut you off. Go ahead and describe what you saw.
We saw these arranged dates with chaperones for people to meet young people, for young people to meet young people, and then with the aim to get married. With that was the goal for them, right? So they go on these dates. I think they a number of 3 dates, and then they decide if they want to continue and go ahead and get married. That's crazy. I don't know if it's exactly like that, but it sounded crazy.
Not too crazy from the Muslims, from the fundamentalist Muslims do very similar stuff. Sometimes it's just a picture and then a couple of meetings and then boom, you're together for the rest of your lives making babies together. Yeah, agreed. It, you know, obviously
actually,
as a victim of that,
and you don't decide
yourself.
System.
As a victim of that system, that's why I'm totally against it. I don't think that it's healthy in any way for either party.
No, it's not. I agree. It's not. But it's not. You're right. It's cute in just the fact that you think, oh, they're just, their goal is to get married. That's cute. I think that's cute. But but not to know who you're getting yourself locked in with for the rest of your life. That's not, it's not logical. It will not be a good match. It's not, you don't have a guarantee of that at all. And people live together and still they're not matches.
Yeah, we definitely saw quite a bit of, in Jerusalem, we saw a very strong Orthodox community, like just a lot of religiosity. But in Tel Aviv, it was just super relaxed. You could even tell by even Jerusalem's roads were like, everything was super clean and organized and everything. And then when you went to Tel Aviv, it was just like chill out by the beach. Obviously everything's, still beautiful. The restaurants are amazing and the coffee shops and stuff, but it just had like a super chill, relaxed vibe. Beautiful buildings as well. I loved it there. What I didn't love was hearing the adhan. That was that was triggering for me.
Even in Jerusalem, right?
That pissed me off. Yeah. I know, but I was like admiring this beautiful Tel Aviv and I'm like recording and then all of a sudden the adhan starts and I'm just like, what? What are you?
They're really trying to be open-minded, but even in Denmark, we're like, no, we don't want that here. Some atheists here complain about the church bells, and I'm like, okay, it's really minor issue. If you live right close to a church, you will maybe hear it often. I don't know. It has never been something I noticed in Denmark, and at the same time, that's cultural, and history and everything due to, it's not the same as Azan, five times a day hearing.
And it's the words too. Like the bells are they're just bells. But they're not with the adhan, it's basically proselytizing. It's almost like cursing the people who aren't coming to pray as the lost ones, come and be saved.
For me, it's traumatic. For me, it's traumatic.
Yeah, it is. It's super traumatic. Totally. It's triggering for sure. I didn't like it. And obviously, I know it was great to push back against these people that try to pretend that Israel is an apartheid state, because what kind of an apartheid state is, obviously it wasn't. You and I saw what it's like to live there. But having the adhan in the streets obviously counters that point.
Tell people who don't know what we're talking about. Adhan is the Muslim call to prayer.
The call to prayer. Yeah. Thanks for that. Yeah, the call to prayer, as you said, 5 times a day. The first one before sunset, and then the last one after sunset. So literally all day long. I didn't like hearing it. I never like hearing it in general, but if it's going to be, like you said, with the church bells in Denmark or church bells in France or in Italy or whatever, it's like, okay, fine, that's your country. So if I'm going to hear adhan in Saudi Arabia or, I don't know, Turkey, Pakistan, 1 out of 57 countries on this planet, it's fine. I'm the one who went to their country.
Yeah, exactly.
So but to hear it in New York, to hear it in Tel Aviv, to hear it, in Toronto, like come on, leave us alone. I don't want to hear
Even
it.
at the wall, what's it called? The wall in Jerusalem, just
The
next
Wailing
to
Wall, the
the
Western Wall.
Wailing Wall, yeah, just next to Al-Aqsa
Oh
Mosque.
yeah, that's
The azan
right.
was going on there. I was like,
Yeah.
and you do this to to make these people happy, and they go there to curse you. You know, they
Yeah.
go to that exact mosque to curse you, and you let them. It's and yeah,
Well,
that
that's
was
just
hard.
a testament to how hard Israel is trying
Yeah,
for this coexistence,
yeah,
this peace, the let's work together. Like, can we just try? Can you please just stop trying to kill us? You know, like we just want to have a little piece of
yeah,
land somewhere where we can live on the
yeah,
world where people aren't trying to kill us. Like they really did. They have been trying very hard. We saw so many times with the trying to create these two-state solutions. I don't know where things are going to end now, but we can definitely see that one side is trying very hard.
yeah,
And there's so much of that, like all the signs are English, Hebrew, Arabic, you
yeah,
know. You go to the Old Jerusalem and you've got the Christian quarter and the Muslim quarter and the Jewish quarter, you know, like it's always
yeah,
like this idea of like, let's live together. And we know that's not what it's like. Forget Gaza, but, or forget anywhere, you know, anywhere in the Muslim world. That's not what it's like. There's no idea of coexistence. I was just posting about in Egypt where they were um, burning down churches, you know, blocking the wells of Christian towns so that the Christian people couldn't get water. And so they'd be forced to
yeah.
go to different areas. That's how we're treating
And it's really
minority groups in the Muslim
yeah,
world.
and it's really hard to understand for people who are not us, Yasmin, because you know, who is the Muslims, who are the who are Muslim, who are the Muslim majority people in the world, and who are the Islamists, and what connection is there, and and do they all want war? No, but the Islamists, they want war, they want, you know, they want all of these things. You know, they're the ones teaching the Muslims to want death. Not all Muslims want that. They want to live normal lives. They just,
Of
a lot
course.
of Muslims that are just leave me alone. I just want to, you know, I just want to go to school, get a job, have a family. That's what they want. They want to see their, you know, grandchildren grow up. And, you know, the Islamists, they want something else. They want
Yeah, you're
teach
right.
them.
And
Yeah.
it's the ones that want something else that are safe. You know what I mean? They want something else from Qatar, from Iran, from New York, right? But it's the people that are being, when they say we want something else, we want, it's okay, we'll sacrifice these martyrs. They're not talking about themselves and their own families. They're talking about these poor Gazans. That's what they're talking about. They're happy to sacrifice their lives. They wouldn't sacrifice their own.
Yeah. And just to go back to your point with what they used, you know, material for building Gaza, they turned into bombs. They get so, you know, the Gaza Strip has gotten so much aid from different organizations, from the UN, from European countries, from Qatar, from Iran. They've gotten so much money, and what have they built? You know, what
Tunnels,
life
that's what they
have they
built.
built for themselves? You
Um,
know, yeah,
So we did talk a little bit about things that we didn't like, but I want to specifically ask you to tell me about things you didn't like. But I'm going to start off first and tell you one of the things that I didn't like, which you probably didn't notice because you don't speak Arabic, is that in the service industry, almost everywhere we went, they were Arabic speakers.
yeah,
And I noticed that very early on. And
yeah,
I met an Arab woman for dinner. You were with me. I was sitting next to this Arab woman named Samah. And I asked her, I'm like, what is with all the service industry being Arabs here? Like, what's going on with that? Because
yeah,
she's a teacher. She teaches Hebrew actually in school. And so I was like, what's going on? And she said, well, I hate to tell you this. She said, but most Arabs are not um, valuing education the
Yeah.
way, like Arab Israelis don't value education in the same way that Jewish Israelis do.
Yeah.
And so that's why they end up in the service industry. And
Yeah.
I was like, okay, fine, I'll accept that. But in the beginning, I was just like, what is this
Or these
segregation I'm seeing
second
here?
grade, but just look at,
Yeah.
I think you're used to, because you're from Canada originally, you're used to seeing, you know, people, because Canada took in very educated foreigners. In Denmark and in Europe, in, a lot of the cleaning ladies are
Yeah,
Muslim.
but these are not taken in foreigners. These are people that have been born and raised in Israel for generations. These are Arab Israelis. They're not
The
foreigners.
same in Denmark, because in Denmark, people came here from Turkey maybe 3-4 generations ago. They still are the ones cleaning and in the service industry with the low pay job, and in nursing homes, you know, with the really hard jobs, because they don't value education as much
Yeah.
as,
Yeah.
you know, as much as.
But I mean, at first glance,
other.
it can look like, because countries like Qatar, for example, there's
Yeah.
a clear segregation, you know,
Yeah.
Indians are the drivers, Filipinos are the nannies. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
when I went there, it kind of reminded me of
Yeah,
that.
of course.
But
Yeah.
of course, I was wrong. I was judging it by my past experience. But the
And
truth is that they're just not pushing their kids in the same
yeah.
way that Israeli kids, or sorry, Jewish Israeli kids are being pushed. And I can see that. I definitely see that as somebody who had to fight tooth and nail to just get a post-secondary education. And in the end, I had to get it for myself because I wasn't going to be offered it. So yeah, I totally get
In
that.
Denmark, with the Muslims that have like been here for generations, or not only Muslims, but a study showed that people with foreign backgrounds, with the males, when they're finished with 9th grade, a lot of them are illiterate, like maybe up to 50% are illiterate.
So what was it about Israel that you didn't like? What did you have noted for that?
I think the same. I when we were in Jerusalem, I looked. You know, they have so many children, these families, and I love children, but at the same time, I know what that does to the mother of that family. You know, because we have all of the, you know, I don't know. I just feel, even though my husband helps a lot, I'm always the one on top of everything, making sure everybody's okay, the emotional stuff, the, you know, everything.
Yeah, we're talking like 5, 6, 7 children. That's what we mean when we say a lot of children.
But what I noticed was that at least when they're out in public, the man does a lot. And that I was happy to see that it's not like I'm sitting, you know, smoking or just eating my dinner and you'll have all the children. It was actually, the husband was very involved in putting the children to sleep, feeding them, and so on. And a lot of that's the difference, because you also, when you go to Muslim countries, you see the same structure with the large families, but a lot of the time the women are at home, the men are out eating for themselves. And if you're happy, if you're lucky to see a family out, all of them, the woman is taking care of everything that has to do with the children. So that was that difference. And also I noticed it reminded me of Iran, because, you know, there are some, you know, there is this decency clothing that the women have to wear. Also, they have something like a hijab kind of thing on. Many of the Orthodox have some, women have something on, you know, that looks like a partial hijab. But I noticed that many of them were trying, as Iranians have been trying for years, to put that on, and at the same time wear something really tight and
pretty. Yeah, they're just trying to be feminine and independent. Yeah,
show their bodies off still.
Yeah.
So that's what you see in the Muslim world as well. You know, I'll put on this hijab, but let me put on this makeup and let me put on this. So that's,
yeah, they still want to be individuals, right? Like women,
it's
what
their
you've
way
been
of
saying
pushing
is,
back as well, right?
yeah,
It's their way of
exactly.
pushing back every day to say, no, I'm not just your decent girl that needs to follow all your rules. I'll be myself as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I've spoken to many women who are part of the Orthodox community who are fighting for, feminism, basically, fighting for more equality within that community. I know a lot of women that have left these, sometimes they're Hasidic communities, very, very strict. Sounds so familiar to somebody who grew up, in a strict Muslim household. So many similarities. In fact, sometimes it's even things that are like way worse. Like they have these specific cleansing rituals after you get your period, and there's like a prayer that some Hasidic men say in the morning, which is like, thank God I wasn't born a woman. Obviously, we saw how in the past women weren't even allowed to read the Torah, whereas now we have female rabbis. So there's been a lot of push. And I think what's really important to note here is just the numbers. So in the Muslim communities, we have a lot of conservatives and fundamentalists.
Yeah.
And we have a little bit of the reformists and the open-minded, liberal thinking, democratic-minded type people.
Yeah.
Whereas you have the opposite, I noticed in Israel, or with Jewish community in general across the planet. The vast majority of them are open-minded, free thinkers, and you have the smaller percentage of those who are pushing the more orthodox ideas. And even within those, you've got people that are pushing for progress. So obviously I don't love religion. Obviously I'm an agnostic atheist, as are you. But it's like, as long as people can do what they want to do freely, then it's like, as long as there's like the restrictions. I'll say one more thing too. Like somebody said to me once, like in Jerusalem, all the food is kosher. And I was like, oh, really? Like I didn't even notice. Like the food was so good. I didn't notice that we were like missing anything. But then I thought, well, that's pretty controlling, like to decide for people. Like there should be, I think, like restaurants where there's options or something. Like I remember when I was, well, yeah, because I mean, it happened in South Africa that this Muslim man went to Burger King and he got a burger with bacon in it. And then apparently he was like throwing up for 3 days and he was so sick and he was like so upset. And then Burger King was like, oh, we're canceling all bacon from all of our burgers in all of South Africa. And I was like, what? That's ridiculous. Like if he doesn't want bacon in his burger, he can simply say no bacon, right? And sometimes mistakes happen, that's the world. But like to cancel it for everybody because this one group don't want it. But it's not the same, of course, because in Israel, it is a Jewish majority country.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's kosher majority, but it's still a Jewish majority country, so whatever. It's their business.
Places in Jerusalem.
In Tel Aviv too.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know how I am with, I just don't like any kind of religious control for whatever reason. I know they've also got some kind of things around, obviously when we're comparing this to like anywhere else in the Middle East, it's a utopia.
It's nothing. Yeah, it's nothing. Yeah.
I am like nitpicking right now.
Yeah.
But like, they've got this thing about gay marriages where you can't perform a gay marriage in the country, but if you were married outside of the country, they will accept it there. Stuff like that.
They have, I think, partnerships. I don't know. I haven't, but they're not fully there yet. They're not fully integrated.
But they're pushing for it. There's a lot of pushback, so that's what I'm happy to see.
Yeah, but
and what was your favorite part?
The food was really good, as you said. That was really good. My favorite part was actually, I don't know. There were so many good things. My favorite part. Maybe actually meeting a group of young people. There is this we were offered to, me and one of the girls in our group were girls. She's a woman. She's just half my age, so I call her a girl. She's a woman. Inas and I, we got the opportunity to go meet with a group of young, I think they were about 18 years old. It's just before going to military to do, into IDF to be a soldier. They have an option to choose a year of just learning about different things about the society, about philosophy, about religion, about politics, and about life. I don't know really, but it's just to building them up, mentally. And we met with them, and it was just, they were like how Iranians want to live. The girls were wearing shorts, and they were just laughing, having fun, and it was a great experience. It just, as a mother, it's just hard to see that these people are going to be fighting in a war, in any time soon. They're just children. And that's what soldiers are, really, right? That's the story of war anywhere. It's the young people, because they're physically fit to be soldiers, and they're just so modern, so cute, and that was just that was nice to meet them, to see. Yeah, and I told them, you're just like what Iranians want, your age want. They want to live like you. That's what they want. They just want to be free and live life. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I missed that, but my favorite activity out of all of the different things that we did, my favorite was meeting the Holocaust survivor. I thought she was just so lovely, so inspiring, so sweet,
and so quick, and so there, and
so funny.
Yeah.
Funny. A Holocaust survivor telling us stories that making us laugh. She was just amazing
And
on
cry.
every possible human level. Oh my God, I cried so much. I kept trying to stop so that I could pay attention, but she would just say things so nonchalantly. And then she'd just move on to the next thing. And I'm like, no, I need some time to, that's a really horrible thing that you just talked about,
Yeah.
But she just has such a,
she was great.
just
She was great
such a testament to human resilience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was really impressed with her, because she was pretty, I was trying to figure out how old she was, because she was so there. I mean, I want to be that clear-minded when I'm that age. She was so she was all there, and she was just very good at communicating her story. And she wouldn't she was very to the point, as you were saying. It's not, she wasn't dwelling with it,
No, and even when somebody talked about October 7th and stuff like that, she still was hopeful, and she was still pushing, saying, no, it wasn't like the Holocaust, it lasted, a certain amount of time, but then we had an army to stand up for us, whereas the Holocaust, we didn't have that for, years. And so it was way worse, and we are improving, and things are getting better. And oh my God, I feel despondent and irritated and frustrated and tired at how this story keeps on repeating itself over and over and over again, right? How Jewish people have to, every single one of them is living with generational trauma, because there's never been a generation that hasn't passed trauma on to the next generation. It's just this constant. And she's not feeling that. She's feeling like grateful, of course. It took her 2 years to get from Poland to Israel. So when
Yeah.
she finally got there, she was just like, I'm home, and she's felt nothing but gratitude every day for this country's existence, and the fact that, you know, the
Yeah.
IDF, and she has support and she has protection, like you said at the
Yeah.
very beginning of this conversation.
And you know what I thought about? One of the things she said made me think, she said, when we fled, everything we had in Poland, we were living a good life before Nazi Germany took over. And everything we had, we lost. And we never got anything from the Polish state. We came with nothing. Yeah. It took us 2 years to, travel to Israel. And we still build up a life here. And that's really the majority of people fleeing the Nazis after after the Holocaust, because if they lost everything. And maybe Germany has paid some of the families something, I don't know, but for her it was really surprising to know that she didn't get anything. She had to start all over again, and that's really the story of many people in Israel. Their families had to start all over again. And yeah,
And I just,
they did.
the fact that she was so short struck me. And it's of course because of how malnourished she was as a child, and you can't get that back, right? Like, she was starving in a forest,
Eating
hiding in a,
worms. Yeah.
eating worms and being happy to find worms to keep her sustained. Like, it was, the amount of starvation was just unfathomable. And it's like that idea that you talked about at the beginning, and this is actually my favorite part of Israel, is that even though her growth was stunted, she's lost her father, watched her father die, watched her brother starve to death, like had all of these absolutely, inhumane things that she's had to, like, that we wouldn't, most people would have trouble reading about it or watching a documentary about it. She lived it all as a child, and physically she's going to be altered for the rest of her life, and still she's full of nothing but positivity and hope, and looking to the future, and looking to life and rebuilding. And to me, she was she was a perfect microcosm of Israel. That's what I really felt, and that was my favorite part, was how the whole country felt like a community that was all hugging each other. It really did. Like, I've traveled the world. Like, I've hit every continent except for Antarctica. And I have never felt, just even driving through this city, forget walking through the cities, which was even more so, this feeling of everybody's just huddled together. We're all here supporting each other. It was like, there's a trauma response is what it is. When you've been through trauma, you have more empathy, and you have more space and understanding and compassion than a person who hasn't been through it, because you're always trying to sort of never let other people feel as badly as you have felt, And that's what it was like, whether it was cab drivers or people on the street or whatever. Everybody had this, it was just caring. It was it felt like a community. The whole country felt like this loving, embracing community in a way that I've never felt that energy anywhere else.
And you know what many of them said? They said, we don't know why people hate us. We don't know why they want to kill us all the time. And it just broke my heart, because they're just trying to figure out what can we do to make you understand. And just what really hurts is the crazy hatred towards Israel that has become mainstream on social media and in on podcasts and on just in Israel is going too far. Israel, what did the
Yeah,
US
that
do?
actually brings me to, let me open it up to the gallery now because we actually have a comment here already. Cindy is asking, did you see any anti-Netanyahu or anti-war protests? I didn't see any protests, but I definitely saw signs everywhere, spray painting. Everybody that I spoke to, I don't think I found a single Netanyahu supporter in the country. I didn't meet anybody who specifically supports him or the Likud party. So I'm not even like, they have a very convoluted political system. But there is, I did not speak to a single Israeli, whether it be a Jewish Israeli or an Arab Israeli, who wasn't saying the exact same thing, which is, let this end. Release the hostages, stop the bombing, let this end. They actually still just want Palestinian people to live in peace and security next to them where they get to live in peace and security. That's still the overwhelming sense there. Where I honestly, after October 7th, I was thinking, there's no way that the Israeli people are going to even accept or agree to be next door to people that could potentially do this again. Like we keep on talking about never again. Well, we know what can happen, and we're not going to wait for this to happen again. But they still want to find a way for peace, harmony, coexistence. That's all I ever heard.
I really feel that
you?
Hamas killed Palestine. I mean, I hope for coexistence, even if it's called Palestine, and Israel. I don't care. But from a logical, point of view, they killed the idea of they did, and this is what is horrifying, is they did what ISIS and Al Qaeda have done, terrorism, massacring of people and filming it, putting it online, and still pro-Palestinians in the West, even not only Islamists, but the woke left are saying, but it was resistance. This is what hurts me the most. This is what is very dangerous. And this is, it's just unacceptable. But what they did was, if that had happened in Los Angeles or in New York, we saw, 9/11, what happened? There has been wars ever since in the Middle East because of 9/11. So what do you expect Israel to do? Any country would have done the same.
Well, we've got a comment here from Nazreen. Nazreen, did you want to unmute and ask it, or did you want me to just read it? Okay, I'll just read it. She says, that sounds inspiring of the Holocaust survivor, but unfortunately, that's not what I've been seeing of young Israelis online. The way they robotically and hatefully talk about Palestinians and Arabs and Muslims. I have no doubt. I'm saying I didn't meet them, so they're not going to be the people that I interacted with. But obviously, I have no doubt that there are hateful people, that there are kids, probably young males that are full of aggression, that are talking probably in a very similar tone to the way that we hear the Islamists speaking, right? I did actually have a debate with one guy that was pushing for from the river to the sea, but Israel. So you're going to find intolerant, hateful people, and you know what? You're mostly going to find them online. That's where they thrive. So I have no doubt that those people exist. Of course they exist. But as somebody who has lived in many Muslim majority countries, attended Islamic schools, went to mosque every Friday, blah, 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 let me tell you, like I said before, it makes a really big difference to look at statistics. Statistically, how many hateful, genocidal, bloodthirsty Israelis are you going to find compared to how many hateful, bloodthirsty on the other side are you going to find, right? It's obviously very different. It's shockingly different because, like Jaleh was saying, it would almost be excusable for more of them to be angry and for more of them to be full of rage right now. And it's actually shocking how they truly are not. It's so hard to explain. When you go to the Nova Memorial, where there are trees planted for every single person that was killed on that day. Every single young person who just went to this festival to party and hang out with their friends. That was the only goal they had. And these young kids lost their lives. When you walk through that, all you see is flowers being replanted, trees being replanted.
Yeah.
Speaking of rebirth, talking about the joy that these people brought to other people's lives, sharing the music that these kids were creating. It doesn't even spend a second harping on the darkness and the negativity and the sadness, which is 100% there. There's no way you go there and you feel nothing but devastation.
Yeah.
But they're not milking it. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? They are just right to the
Yeah.
actually in a kind of an unhealthy way, to be honest, because I'm like, can we take a moment to like even just like it just goes straight to the no, we will rebuild, no, we will regrow, no, we will, like they just
Yeah.
push it,
I
they just push
agree.
it back.
I agree.
Um,
I tell them all
But
the
I just
time.
let me finish my comment here, Jaleh.
Yeah.
In the opposite way of the way it is in Muslim communities, where they just harp on still complaining about losing Spain 600 years ago. You know what I mean? Like they just do not stop with the whining and the victimhood. And it is a complete opposite antithesis kind of energy that you feel when you're in that country. Go ahead, Jaleh.
Yeah, I really 100% agree with your point about, they shouldn't just ask, oh, why do they hate me? I want to do everything so they don't hate me. Because for the Islamists who are preaching death, they will never stop hating you. So those kind of people you have to fight. But the rest of the Muslim people that you have within your own country, in Israel, and also the Palestinian areas, you should work to be able to coexist with them. And of course there is a hatred and anger among the Israelis, and yeah, it should be talked about as well. But they're really doing everything not to kill civilians. They're really trying their best.
I'll answer some people here in the comments don't want to speak out, so I'm just going to respond for them. In response to the comment about the young Israelis online that are being hateful, a couple of people have responded saying Israelis have their haters just like any other people, and online usually implies extremism. It takes the worst out of people. There are many people with a non-hateful mentality. And then another person said, unfortunately, the young people don't remember a period before Netanyahu or any peace attempts. Also, there are a few Jewish youngsters who have met non-Jewish Israelis. Oh, this is very important. There are few Jewish youngsters who have met non-Jewish Israelis, unfortunately. And I'll explain why that's a really important point. But there are some amazing initiatives that I'm proud to be part of that try to connect between the different sectors of society. That is such an important point because that's the story of the Muslim majority world as well. Most of them have such vicious anti-Semitic hate, like just like bloodthirsty for Jewish people to die because they've never met a Jewish person in their life. And so they have been sold this idea that Jewish people are truly evil. And story after story after story, there's so many of them, but look up Hamid Abdul Samad, who is an Egyptian man from Germany. He tells a really great story, and I have one in my book as well, story after story of people like him and I that were raised in this anti-Semitism, and then we meet the first Jewish person, and just the shock to our systems, you know, like this, suddenly we're forced to deal with this cognitive dissonance. So that's a very good point. The same can be true on the opposite side. If you're being born and raised in Israel and you've never met an Arab Israeli, you've never met Muslims from anywhere in the world, it's easier to create like this demonized idea of like these bloodthirsty Arabs, all they want to do is kill and they just love death, blah, blah, blah.
Actually asked the youngsters we met, how many of you have Arab friends? And a few had, but the majority didn't have. And one of the boys followed me while I was, we were finished, and he said, "You asked us if we have Arab friends. I live close to the West Bank, and when Iran was bombing us and I was going to the shelter, I could hear them shout Allahu Akbar."
Yeah.
So that's the reality as well. They're kind of afraid of getting to intermingle with people who might really just hate them for being Jewish.
Somebody said here, even religious Jews are separated from secular Jews. So it's the sectarian school system, David Cohen is saying, that causes these problems. But Nazreen, you're here. We're talking about your question. So go ahead and unmute yourself and comment.
Hi, thanks, Yasmine. So I just wanted to comment on what you said about, like how a lot of and what was said in the comments as well about a lot of Jewish Israelis not having met, or youngsters not having met non-Jewish, and the same in the Middle East. And I was raised in the Middle East, and yes, I hadn't met a single Jewish person until I think I started working, and we'd met folks from the US, especially American Jews. But I also want to say that I was not, and I did for a large part of my childhood, I went to Friday prayers and I went to these gatherings with my mom and things like that. I went to like different schools of Islam. But I did not hear this hatred of Jews as a community of Jews, like I would hear maybe Yehudi or the term in the Quran. It's there, I think, in a few places, but people themselves, there was no talk about like hating Jewish people for their religion or for their race.
Nazreen,
That
where
is
did
not
you grow
something
up,
I faced.
if I mind asking?
Kuwait.
It's okay, because it sounded, I thought maybe your family is from Pakistan?
India.
India. Okay. Yeah. That's great. I'm glad that you had that experience, and I know that that it would be different when you're in Kuwait and you're going to, international schools and whatever the situation may be, and that I'm happy that that was your experience, but you have to know that that's not the overwhelming majority of experiences, right? The overwhelming majority of us, when we're going to mosques or when we're going to Islamic schools, we're hearing a lot of anti-Semitism, or we're hearing a lot of hate towards Jewish people. I don't know how well you speak Arabic. You probably do if you're raised in Kuwait. But quite often when they say those du'ats at the end of the prayer, where it's just like everybody's just saying, Ameen, Ameen, Ameen. If you listen to those, you're not going to ever hear one single ending to a khutbah with everybody saying Ameen without at least one reference to how we're going to eradicate the Jews and how we're going to eradicate the non-believers. It's not just Jews, it's all non-believers, but Jews are always, they get like their special place of privilege of being hated more than any other group. But yeah, it's very, very common. I'm glad to
I
hear that
just
that wasn't your experience, and I hope that your experience becomes the mainstream soon, inshallah.
Yeah, hopefully. And I just wanted to add that the du'as at the end, especially during Ramadan nightly prayers, I've always seen them as mostly like what we say, like political national thing. For example, when the Rohingya Muslims were going through things, it was always like, hopefully they get through this and they get victory. And so it was always that Israel and Palestine was always in the, general consciousness. It was on TV, of course, like I grew up with it. So even before I had like close Palestinian friends, obviously it was a cause that I was very much aware of and close to because it was a part of the Muslim community. That's how I saw it. It was not that, okay, we hate them because of their religion. It was because there was a lot of unfair things that happened in history, and then they still go through this struggle. So we are hoping for a part of this community, Islamic community, to be relieved of their distresses. That sort of thing is what I looked at it. But yeah.
Okay, well, that's beautiful.
But that's what I also thought about Iran. Iran in the regime would always tell us, we don't hate the Jews. We have Jews in Iran. I think still 10 to 12,000 maybe Jewish people are living inside Iran. They have their synagogues and so on. So I believe, okay, then we don't want to kill the Jews. It's only Israel that is the problem. That was what the regime would say. But then when I was writing my book, Public Secrets of Islam, I kept running into this hadith, the last day will not come until, you can search it. I won't elaborate, but it has to do with killing and the Jewish minority. And I searched on the Iranian regime's own theological website to find out whether this was also their position, because it was the Sunni, Hizb ut-Tahrir, Muslim Brotherhood, everyone on the Sunni part.
There's no question. Yeah, that is the religion.
It was the
but
same.
Some people choose not to follow it, like the group of people that Nazreen grew up with. They're choosing to be a little bit more progressive and open-minded, but the religion is there, the doctrine is there, and that is the core of the doctrine.
A lot of Muslims don't know everything, even though they go to mosques regularly, unless they're being brainwashed to go to jihad or something like that. They will not get to the really bad parts of the religion, of the theology, which is the last day and so on. So it for sure there is a theological problem, and I'm really happy that even Muslims within Muslim countries are speaking about it. Al-Du'a Sharif, who I know you know as well.
Yeah, well, all the people that we were in the group with, that's the whole point of Sharaka. It's to bring those people together
and clarity,
and then to encourage them. Yeah, and then encourage them to go back to their home countries and sort of be that ripple effect, Exactly. So and what's really important, I have to say, about this group Sharaka, and let me know, Jaleh, if this was your experience as well. They were not in any way rah pro-Israel. They were just like, welcome to our country. Let's go to some places and meet some people. Like it was not like PR or anything. It was truly an opportunity for, like Nazreen was saying, most of us grow up never having met another Jewish person in our lives. So it's like, okay, come meet Jewish people, come to these, Jewish majority cities and form your own impressions.
Yeah, my experience was the same. I was actually thinking I would have loved to meet the more hardcore right-wing people as well. just no, I don't know if it's right wing, but it's like I want people to have.
They probably wouldn't want to meet us anyway, because that type of person would probably just hate us just because of our ethnicity.
I don't know. Maybe right wing is a bad. I'm not explaining it well. I mean, it wasn't an IDF tour, for sure it was not. And I would have no problems getting to know the IDF more and listening. And I think it's also important for the Israelis to understand IDF is really important for Israel.
No, I don't think IDF are right wing, obviously, like they're kids.
But I mean, they're
just
more like, we know we have to fight. Whereas many on the left, they're still like, let's go party at the border with his, at the border of Lebanon, right? As the Nova Festival was doing. So there is that naive understanding with some of the left-wing peace-loving people, even in Israel. And this is also a part of the reality that we don't know about. The Nova Festival people were peace-loving people who wanted to party close to Gaza. They are
as were all the people in the kibbutzes that were killed as well.
Exactly. So this is for sure something that is lost in all of the understanding of that. There are so many people who thought that if they would just open their homes to people from Gaza, they would, have a bigger chance for coexistence. And a lot of the people who came to work there used the information for the terrorists to use on October 7th to kill these people. And this is also the part of what we learned about when we visited the kibbutz.
Yeah. David, you have been so patient. I'm really sorry for leaving you there for so long. Please go ahead and unmute yourself.
All right. I understand you got to try to achieve a lot. There's something that I'd like to discuss that no one ever seems to talk about. So maybe it's just, it's that comparing the Bible and the Quran as literature. And I find the Quran is really poverty, is really poor literature, and the Bible is much better. And I would like to see more of that argument used in favor of the Bible and against the Quran.
Well, you might be in the wrong group because we're atheists. So I couldn't even.
No, sorry.
I've not read.
Yeah.
I've not read
Okay.
the Old Testament or New Testament. I wouldn't be able to compare. I've read the Quran front to back many times. So I can talk about that and how that really needed an editor and agree was very badly written. But I can't make a comparison.
Oh, well, I can send you a couple of files. I'm going to take a couple of pages, but just a very simple example. Is say that in the Joseph story, the Bible version, and putting aside any belief in God or anything, but the Bible story is much better one for teaching forgiveness and reconciliation. And if you look at Muslim societies, they tend to be much more fractured, don't they? And holding on to grudges. Yeah. And I think a lot of that comes down to the Joseph story. And on the other hand, the Quran version of the Joseph story, it emphasizes the deception of the sons against their father. And it just seems to me that the difference in the two societies or cultures is actually a reflection of a few basic things in stories.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think the story of Abraham is another story, because when Muslims tell the story, it's like, it's almost the encouragement to honor violence and honor killings, because it's saying if you kill your child, that you are the most pious of the pious. And so that's why you still see that happening today to usually girls that are being killed because their parents feel that it is their ultimate duty as a pious Muslim to sacrifice their child if they're not being good Muslims. Whereas that same story is being told with like a different twist when it's coming from Christianity or when it's coming from Judaism. That's the same story, but they flip it and they make it like God would never ask you to actually sacrifice your son. He didn't really want you to sacrifice your son, but it's about, I don't know, whatever. I'm not really even sure, but and I might even be getting that wrong. But the point is, it's like, it's not about, yep, if you're a good person, kill your child. to prove your loyalty. It's come from a different perspective. So yeah, I do see that.
See, actually, in the Abraham story, there is a story where a section of ours in the Bible where Abraham argues with God. Right? That part, of course, is not there in the Quran, because you couldn't
Right,
imagine.
yeah, of course.
See, that's a very different.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
agree with you. Thank you, David. Thank you so much.
Right.
We're going to bring it back to the topic of Israel, though, but I appreciate your comment. Julia, you're next.
Hi. So I don't know if I'm the only Israeli here, but I'm very happy to hear about your experience, Jaleh and Yasmine, in my country. I wanted to hear more about how it was to visit the Bedouins. I saw that Yasmine posted some videos and photos, and if you can expand on that a little more.
Okay, I'll go first and then I'll let you go, Jaleh. I was floored. I was not, I thought that it was such an amazing man, the man who was our host. He is a man who his grandfather was kidnapped from Africa as a child and raised as a slave in Egypt. So obviously by Muslim Arab slave traders. And so he was raised in Egypt as a slave, and now his grandson gets to say, I am an Israeli Bedouin right now. Like he does not harbor any anger or sadness or resentment. In fact, he just feels pure pride that his family can go from being enslaved to him being the strong, empowered man that he is today. And he credits a lot of the fact that his family can be so empowered today to the state of Israel. And that's why he voluntarily, him and his brothers, many people in his family have gone to serve in the IDF because they feel very grateful. He talked about how any of the surrounding Muslim countries all around him, that he would never get the rights that he does in Israel. He feels gratitude for that every day. They were so, they embodied the Israeli spirit, which doesn't surprise me because they are Israeli. But they embodied that same spirit of just looking towards the future. He talked about, he said something along the lines of like, my people are not Muslims or Jews, or my religion is not, this or that. My religion is love. My people are all humans. That's not the way Muslim Arabs talk, let me tell you. Like, that was very different from the rhetoric we normally hear from the Arabs, from Muslim Arabs. So it was very, very different. He had a very different cultural perspective on the world. But then in the same way, they were actually very Arab in their hospitality. Like it felt very like there was a mejlis, the way it was set up and the way they brought the tea and everything, and the way that we all sat and ate. And the way that I commented on the bread, the Bedouin bread. I'm like, how do you make this? And then he goes out and he brings me the thing and shows me how it was made. And it was all it felt like comfortable. It felt like I was at home, like, it did feel very familiar, Arab-like, but at the same time, mindset wise was very Israeli and different from the Arab mindset. So what people have been commenting before about, and even David was just saying this about the Quran, that sort of resentment, anger, just rage, aggression, that's a very common sentiment in the Arab culture. And so he didn't harbor any of that. Such a lovely man. Even it was really heartbreaking. And he talked to us about how, this is really important. He talked to us about how there were Bedouin people who were killed and kidnapped on October 7th. And a couple of the women who were killed were in hijab. And when they said, we're Muslim, the terrorists said, you're worse than the Jews because you work with the Jews and you live with the Jews. So he very clearly can see who his enemies are and who the ones who value him as a human being are. You know, he knows that these terrorists would kill him just like, you know, they would kill a Jewish person. And he knows that in Israel, he's protected. And in fact, he spends a lot of his time volunteering, even though he's not part of the IDF anymore. He volunteers to protect the Bedouin communities against the terrorists. So yeah, just so much to say, but I think I've touched on probably all the main points there. I'm sure I forgot more. It was
Yeah.
absolutely amazing meeting him.
My experience was that the Arabs, we met a lot of not a lot, but we met a couple of at least couple of other Arabs.
We met more at the dinner later.
Yeah, we met more at the dinner, and what we talked to them about was like, how are your, you know, visions for the future of a Palestine and so on. And they were like, no, Israel is my home country. I get all of my rights here. I have all, you know, I am being accepted and everything is not perfect, but I am being treated as an equal. And
women saying this because women know. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. We met, I think there were 3 at the dinner, and I met another Arab Israeli at one of the museums, and all of them were like, yeah, we have the same rights. One of them was working at, you know, the university in Tel Aviv, and her husband was a PhD student at the university, also Arab. So they have great lives compared, and they would say this, compared to any other Arab country. We have so many more options and rights here in Israel, and we want to just be a part of Israel. They didn't want even to discuss Palestine because they were like, we are born here. This is our country. This is what we will relate to. We don't have any, you know, before the Islamists came along, we were all doing fine. You know, in the state of Israel. Yeah.
Did you want to comment further, Julia, or you're happy?
No, I'm happy. I also wanted
Okay.
to just say something else. You both mentioned about the state of education for Arabs in Israel. And based on research, it is getting better. There are more and
That's
more,
good.
you know, it is divided into different sectors. As you know, Arab Israeli means so many different things as well, but things are improving. Thank you.
I'm happy to hear that. I hope that the state of education in general improves for all Arabs all over the world, all people, all kids, all, you know, but I'm very happy to hear that. Thank you. Yoav, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Yeah, close enough. It's yeah, pretty good actually.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so I try to keep it short. So first of all, I just want to thank you for your work. I follow you, and I think you do great work on the subject, and you know, the more American problems with all the woke stuff that we see, etc. I really appreciate it. I think one of the hardest things I had to that we feel over here when we see, you know, the protests in the West, and I do think it's, people talk a lot about anti-Semitism. Maybe there is something to that, but I also think it's like a more manifestation of like a more generic Western problem that we've seen in the last decade. And it's kind of takes itself out right now on this story. So that's one thing. I have a lot of points, but I'll just stick to the one, so I won't hog all the time. Perhaps about this, Arabs in Israel and the so-called apartheid state, etc. So here's a lot of people, if they want to sort of deny it, you can point to Arab politicians. There used to be an Arab Supreme Court judge in Israel. I think he's retired now. So that's all true, but there's actually an even stronger example, I think. So about 20% of Israelis are Arabs. But in the last years, I think that, I don't know the exact number, but it's around 50%. So maybe it's 40% of the new doctors coming out of Israeli universities are Arab. They have a lot of affinity to the medical field in general, not only doctors, also nurses, etc. But doctors, if you go to an Israeli hospital, you will be
thankfully I
treated
didn't, so
by an Arab at some stage, because they are very prominent in this field. And that's a lot of people. It's not like an isolated example. Okay, here's this Arab party in the parliament, etc. It's like really more of a systemic thing. And maybe one question for you.
Mhm.
As I said, like the things going on in campuses, all that, it's very, very disheartening. And these, elite universities, they are the future leaders in the United States. And I kind of asked myself, how does our future look, and what do you think? Do you think that there's hope that things will get better, or are we looking at some very dark times ahead?
I think that things are already starting to get better. I think that when I wrote my book, I was very frustrated at the fact that nobody was paying attention, that I could see, and I think you're absolutely correct. Anti-Semitism is a part of this problem. It's like a comorbidity, like there's many different horrible things that have led to where we are today. Anti-Semitism is definitely one of them, whether it's coming from Islamists or Marxists. But there are a lot of different other issues that have caused this current eruption that we're seeing right now. And I think that the fact that now things are out in the open, I already feel relieved, because when I wrote my book, I was feeling frustration and anger that nobody was paying attention. Nobody could see how badly this capitulation to extremists was, how bad this could end up, right? Did I think that I was going to see people, praising Hamas and the Houthis and the Islamic regime of Iran in the subways of New York and in the streets of Toronto and on the campuses of New York and with, in Paris and in Sydney and da da da? I didn't think it was going to be this blatant, to be honest. I knew it was all there, but I didn't think that they would have the chutzpah to actually just do that. But they have been so empowered that they do not feel fear screaming these things about the final solution from their megaphones. We have created this environment where we capitulated to extremists so much that they felt complete no fear. And part of that was the word Islamophobia and using that as a bludgeon to attack anybody who criticized the religion. And why I say I'm feeling positive now is there is a definite consciousness that we have a problem and we have to push back against it now. And so I at least feel, and I have to be honest with you, even my Israeli friends, I October 7th has been such an eye-opener for people across the planet. And not just October 7th, but October 8th. Because the next day we saw such celebration, we saw such jubilation all across the, from all of these different Muslims, and all of these, not just Muslims necessarily, but all of these different groups before Israel had even retaliated. And that made a lot of people realize, like, whoa, like you didn't even take a heartbeat. You didn't even take a second to acknowledge the terrorism that just happened. We still don't even know how many people were killed and raped and kidnapped. And you're just immediately posting on your fucking Black Lives Matter, paragliders, and saying something about resistance and whatever. Like it was quite shocking to see how the support for terrorism was immediate. And I think that it really shocked a lot of people into paying attention to what was going on. And another thing, of course, was when those 3 university presidents were in front of Congress and they couldn't even say the words that calling for the genocide of Jews was against their code of conduct. They were like, well, it depends on the context, or blah, blah, blah. That was quite shocking for a lot of people too, obviously. And so I am seeing a pushback. And when I commented on my Israeli friends before, I was saying, like, even they used to say to me, oh, Yasmine, sometimes you can be such an alarmist. You need to relax a little bit. Like, maybe not in those exact words, but that was kind of what they were saying to me. After October 7th, they now know what I know. They now see things from my perspective, because I always knew that these monsters existed because I lived amongst them. I was forced into marriage with one of them. So when I saw Shani Luke on the back of that truck, and then Jaleh can back me up on this because she from Iran, you see Masa Amini, you see all of the millions of girls that have been beaten and raped and mutilated and left to die, chopped up, buried, this is what they do. And so we weren't surprised, right? They had been doing this already in our communities for all these years. Now it's seeped into Israel, and the terrorism has now reached a different group of people. But it wasn't surprising to us because we already knew this. But a lot of people had been living in their little, privileged bubbles, ivory towers, whatever it is, having these intellectual conversations and these intellectual thought experiments, and they don't know what life is like on the ground, right? They don't know what they're actually dealing with. Whereas people like Jaleh and I always knew. And now a lot more people know. And so that's why I have hope, because just the fact that we know that we have an enemy, we understand the extent of how much that enemy wants us dead, that's going to make us pay attention and push back in a way that we didn't when we were unaware or unwilling to acknowledge or admit how bad it actually was.
I mean, it's a good thing that they're showing their true self, their true face. Both the wokists and the Islamists, pro-Hamas Brotherhood, the regime supporters, the regime, Hezbollah and so on, even in the West. Because you know what, I think there was somebody from the intelligence police, I never get this word right, the secret police, the people who work with terrorism to fight, to stop terrorist attacks and so on. Someone said in Danish media, we were surprised that this kind of Islamists would do terrorism, and that we have a case going on now that with people supporting Hamas, and they were planning terrorist activity in Denmark, a terrorist attack in Denmark, and the police actually said we were surprised to see that they were doing this. And this is, of course, because after 9/11, they thought that, and since then, they think that always, it's like Al-Qaeda, it's ISIS, the Muslim Brotherhood, the Iranian regime, Hezbollah, they're not our problems. They're not blowing stuff up yet, right? So we'll work with them, we'll partner with them, they're our allies. And this is what we've been telling them, being called Islamophobes all the time. These are actually the worst kind of Islamists because they're so smart. They're good at talking your language, pretending to be, you know, Democrats, but we can still not condemn stonings and stuff like that. You know, they're playing both games. And what they did on October 7th, I think, showed the world that they're just like ISIS. They're just like Al-Qaeda. There is no difference. They use the same exact methods to kill people and to show it and post it online. But what we have to understand is we need other political, we need the politics to change to be able to now look for, you know, the political Islam, as they call it. Oh, that's not as dangerous. That's actually more dangerous than, you know, the pure jihadis that ISIS and Al-Qaeda were. So we have to take it serious, and you know, there has to be political action against these people. And you know, even in Denmark, it's illegal to legitimize terrorism, but they're doing it. Nothing is being done. You know, a lot of people are online saying things that is actually illegal. It's not being prosecuted. And this is, of course, really, really, really dangerous, because people are going to die if we don't do something about it. Yeah.
Okay, I am just going to end with somebody asked a question about the group that we went with. So the group are called Sharaka. And this is a photo from Yad Vashem, which is the Holocaust Memorial in Jerusalem. And so somebody was asking, how can we contribute, donate, support Sharaka? So please go to Sharaka NGO. You can go to their website. They've got a Twitter account. They've got a Instagram account, and you can connect with them there. I really do think that they are doing amazing work. Somebody in the comments said here that the biggest push against Arabs coming forward and speaking about how they do want peace with Israelis is other Arabs calling them Zionist collaborator, paid by Mossad, traitor, blah, 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 blah. It's a cult, right? Just like if you're on the left and you're going to say, well, actually, men can't get pregnant, you're going to be attacked, right? Like when you're part of a cult mindset that believe absurdities or believe, you know, genocidal things, and if you want to push back against that, they're going to see you as the enemy. So it is very, very difficult for the people who do join Sharaka and who are interested in peace and coexistence, and who do believe that Israelis have just as much right to live in peace and prosperity as Palestinians do. It's very difficult for them to say that, for them to be a part of this community. And I think people quite often talk about, you know, we're not hearing enough Arab voices, or we're not hearing enough voices from the Middle East pushing back. Like, I just need you to acknowledge how incredibly dangerous that is, please. Like, just take a moment to think about that. A lot of people these days are even too scared to push back against what we're calling the woke online. They're like, I might get canceled. I might get, you know, at my job, they might start calling me racist, xenophobe, transphobe, whatever. You're afraid too. You know what it's like. But just multiply that by a couple of thousand, because these are people that are living in communities where they will be beaten to death, where they will be hacked with machetes in the street, where they will be thrown in prison and hanging from a crane with their head missing. That's what they're up against. They're not just up against being canceled or being called racist. So that's part of the reason why you're not hearing a lot of sane voices from the Middle East. There is obviously a lot of indoctrination, and that indoctrination is like default, right? But the people that break out of that indoctrination, we don't know how many they are. We can't even hear their voices. Now, I say this as someone who owns an organization called Free Hearts, Free Minds, and I support those free thinkers in the Middle East. So I have an idea, like I may be reaching 1 to 2% of those free thinkers. And our wait lists are like 90% of the people who contact us have to stay on the wait list, because we have so many people contacting us from all over the Muslim majority world all the time. There are so many free thinkers out there. There are so many people that want peace out there. But it's very, very, very dangerous for them to speak up. And that's why it's really important that we support Sharaka and that we support the people who come to these delegations, because where else are they going to get support, right? The Islamists and the jihadis, they're getting support from Iran or Turkey or Qatar or whatever. Where are the free thinkers getting their support from? Where are the open-minded Arabs and Muslims and people from the Muslim world getting their support from? Nowhere.
Not even in the West, we are not supported. I am an, I'm seen as, an Islamophobe. I'm seen as an extremist because I call out these problems. The same with you, Yaz. You should be, we should be working with the governments of these countries that we live in, but we are not. We are seeing as people who are disrupting the peace. We are speaking up against the problems that exist, because the appeasement mindset of the Western world is so dominant right now, even though there is breaking up because they can't have their campuses, ruined as they're being ruined all over the place and, in every country. But we have to, this appeasement, let's just talk and let's, find a solution with these people who want to destroy us. It's not going to happen. We have to have them be met with consequences. And if we are not doing that, the problem is, it's going to get worse before before people wake up. And I hope that they will. And
I hope so too.
What you were describing, this is actually the reason why Islam was never reformed, because every time somebody comes out and problematizes anything within the theology, they're called a traitor, a Mossad agent, a collaborator, whatever they're called, just because they want to change a small thing within the theology. So this is the good Muslims are out there, and we should help them, get a voice within this craziness going on.
And that reminds me, we should also plug another organization that I have founded and that Jaleh is a member of, and that's called the Clarity Coalition. So the Clarity Coalition is for everybody: Christians, Muslims, ex-Muslims, atheists, Hindus, Jewish people, it doesn't matter. That's
we need to bring
irrelevant.
Sharaka and Clarity together, because we're doing almost the same.
Similar
Yeah,
things,
very similar,
not quite. Sharaka is only the Arab world,
of course,
and Israel, that it's that partnership. But Clarity is a global coalition of people who are pushing back against this Islamist ideology, whether it be in our media, our government, our schools, etc. So that's claritycoalition.org. Go to our website, read more about it, click the Join Us button, and join our coalition. We have a conference coming up May 15th, where we're all going to get to meet each other. We met each other last year in Salzburg, Austria. It's a really great group, and it's that what we were speaking up, we are supporting each other. Really, that's what this coalition is because we're not getting any support from any, higher source. We're not US, Israel, Sweden, Switzerland, France, these countries that you'd think would be supporting secular minded people in these areas of the world. They're not. Like I said, the vicious Islamists are always getting support. You've got Ilhan Omar, Linda Sarsour, Rashida Tlaib. They're all getting their money from Iran or Turkey or whatever. They're all being supported. No countries are supporting us. So we're supporting each other. So again, that's claritycoalition.org. And I thank you all for joining us. A lot of you were getting up at like 2 or 4 a.m. for this conversation. And a lot of you had to just, log off because you're falling asleep. And really thank you so much for joining. I'm sorry it was at such an odd time, but Jaleh and I both had travels. And so we had to try and find the best time that worked for both of our schedules.
Thank you so much.
But yeah, thank you so much, Jaleh, for joining me and for being such a wonderful friend and such a wonderful voice in this
You
important
too.
work.
Thank you.
And yeah, thank you everyone for joining us, and stay safe, take care. Shalom and salam.
Shalom and salam, yeah.
Bye, everyone.
After hearing all that, you might be left wondering, what can I do? How can I help? Well, this is why I created a nonprofit called Free Hearts, Free Minds. We are the only organization dedicated exclusively to helping these free thinkers. We empower them with our programs and supportive community, lifting them up so they can heal, speak out, and begin to make positive changes, not just in their own lives, but within the broader community around them. If this is a cause that resonates with you and you want to make a difference, one way to do that is by donating to Free Hearts, Free Minds. Because not enough people care about this cause, we need people like you to help fuel this change. You can donate via our website, freeheartsfreeminds.com. Thank you. Every dollar you donate makes a difference.